everyone. This is Jody Vesley here again with the HeartWay Pastor and Missionary Caregiver Podcast. Welcome. It is 2023 now. We are almost a week into the year, and this year, we're starting off with a new season that I'm really excited about making decisions. And I think everyone can benefit from this. I really do. I mean, we're going to be focusing in a lot on the call and making decisions within the context of the call to ministry, whether that be when do I push forward in ministry? When do I hold back? Where do I go? And what capacity do I serve? And navigating through all these decisions, because sometimes there may be multiple seemingly good decisions, and other times there might be just a bunch of not so great decisions. And navigating through these things, again, within the context of the call, but also for all of you out there listening who are not called to ministry, that listen to our podcast, I do appreciate you listening in. And in this season, we are still going to address making decisions just in general in life, how to navigate, who do I, how do I make the big decisions, like who do I marry? Who am I going to spend the rest of my life with? What kind of career do I pursue? What kind of jobs do I pursue? How do I make those decisions? What process can I go through and it be helpful? Because, I mean, honestly, a lot of people mess up in these areas, and they make rash decisions, or they make decisions with false presuppositions, false expectations, and maybe just a false ideology of what these kind of things will look like and end up being like, and then end up in this really chaotic state that affects a lot of other people and not just them. And so it is so critical to make decisions well and be okay with the idea of making decisions and the decisions that you make not turning out exactly how you were expecting, the results of that not looking exactly how you were expecting, leaving room for God to work in a way that you still trust Him and trust that you were following Him and He was guiding you in this way, and He understands that you can't always make the perfect and best decision, but He can work out through that. But what we want to try to avoid is making decisions that are in opposition to the will of God and opposition to God's plan for our lives. And so we're going to go through navigating, making decisions. And so I'm really excited about the season. Just something that I want to address as we get into this episode is, please, if you feel the need to reach out for any sort of care in any sort of capacity, we are constantly updating our website and adding things to it and tweaking our ministry, our HeartWay ministry, and in terms of care to all ministers and their families and what we do and what that looks like. And more people are beginning to use this ministry that we started last year. Actually, we started last January, so it's been a year since we've started the HeartWay Pastor and Missionary Caregiver Ministry, and we're so excited about all the great things that God has done through that ministry so far, about the positive impact that God's used us to have in people's lives since then. And we're excited about this year, about 2023, and what's going to happen this year. Some big things that we have coming up this year is we have a TCK transition seminar, and that will be in Spokane, Washington, just after Father's Day in that area. And again, more information about that and what that is on our website, heartwaycare.org. So anything that you want to look into in the terms of care, if you want to reach out to us for some sort of care, or just with some questions, and you're not really looking for any specific coaching or counseling, but you just want to ask questions, we are a resource that you can come to, and we would like for you to come to us. So please don't hesitate to come to us. If you have experienced some benefit of the HeartWay ministry, or have experienced benefits of care and see the need of people in ministry getting care, please share that with other people you know who are in ministry, whether they are specifically serving in ministry roles or the family of someone serving in a ministry role. And so as we get in today, and then as we get into this season, we're going to focus in on this episode today on a decision, a really big decision that I had to make this past year, this past fall, and coming to serve at Horizon Baptist Church here in Missouri City, Texas. And it was just something I would not have told you in 2022 that in 2023 I would be in this position. I wouldn't have even told you at the beginning of last year that I would be in this position now. It is just something that I feel that God orchestrated and led and had to open my heart to. And so as we get into this, I want us to think on this. Sometimes decisions are really easy to make, and others are not. We can understand that, right? For instance, you need to work to earn money. You need money to live, obviously. So you work because you work, and you will get out. And because you work, you will get out of bed. You will get dressed to go to work, and there's these decisions that just have to be made in order to meet this end goal of like just survival, right? There's these decisions that have to be made just to survive. And also, that you need to tie your shoes, right, before going out in them. That's not really a decision, like after you put on your shoes, the shoelaces, are you going to tie them or not? It's just something we do out of habit, out of nature. It's not something we really have to think about. We just do it. It's habitual. Or that eventually you're going to need to eat, right, at some point. You're going to need to do this, whether you do it on a very regular basis 3 times a day, or snack throughout the day, or just eat one meal a day, or even if you could be fasting for a period, but eventually you're going to eat. That's just there's no decision about whether or not I'm going to eat at some point. You will eat at some point. Now, what you eat and all that stuff, that's a different story. And so sometimes in that case, right, decisions aren't so easy to make. Sometimes, in fact, they're really, really hard. And maybe there is more than one seemingly good decision, or maybe the decisions all seem bad. What do you do in these cases? How do you decide what career to pursue and then what job to have? How do you decide what types of food to eat and how often to eat? How do you decide whether or not you will get married and whether or not you will have kids? That is so difficult sometimes. How do you decide where you will live and in what kind of place? How do you decide where you will spend how you will spend your time each day? How will you decide where you will go to church and serve in that capacity? How do missionaries decide where they will go on the field? That was a big thing for me. How do pastors decide where they will pastor? How do church members decide what ministries they will be involved in? These types of questions are oftentimes not so easy to answer, and yet they are so vital to our lives, and they dictate so much. So we're going to discuss making decisions in this season, and I'm going to start off this episode today going over our decision to come to Horizon Baptist Church, and my decision personally to serve as care pastor as an associate role, in addition to continuing with the HeartWay ministry and the Russian ministries online that God has called us to and is using us in and is blessing those ministries. At the beginning of last year, we began seeing the inevitable downfall of support returning stateside. This happens whether continuing in mission work or not, there's just any time a foreign missionary makes that transition back stateside, there's an inevitable downfall of support, regardless. And we did some deputation, and God has provided support. We have also lost support. And to be frank and honest and transparent, I'm still in the process of combining everything up at the moment, but I think we're around negative $17,000. That's negative $17,000 for the year in our mission account, meaning in our case that we have very, very little in our mission account at the moment. And so after deputation that we did in the summer, it was clear something needed to change, and I wasn't sure what to do. To put you in my shoes, and maybe you can feel this, maybe you've been there, maybe you're in it right now, where you just see that bank account going down and down and down and down, and you're wondering, God, what do you want me to do? I'm trusting you in this. I'm putting you first. I'm pursuing after you. I'm trusting in your promises. Are you going to provide? And you think through that, and you have to have faith that God will provide as you pursue him, pursue his will, put him first in your life, and somehow, in some way, he's going to provide. You just have to be obedient in it. And that doesn't mean not doing anything. It does mean doing stuff. That does mean working. But what does that specifically look like? I think a lot of times in these moments of panic, we just kind of give up in some way. I hate to use that term, but we get discouraged about following God. We doubt our calling. We don't know what to do. We're frustrated. And so we make a rash decision. We save ourselves. We depend on ourselves. We take refuge in ourselves. And maybe that decision wasn't in the will of God, and yet it meets that seemingly vital need of that declining bank account, but maybe God had something really, really, really awesome planned for you if you had just held out another week or another month or another few months. I had to ask someone the other day who was debating their call. I was in a coffee shop with him, and he just asked, he's like, man, I had to ask him, would you be spiritually content doing anything else? And he said no. And, sometimes that's what we need to ask ourselves. I've had to ask myself that. I had to ask myself that in this decision and ending up where I'm at today at Horizon. Would I be content spiritually doing anything else outside of ministry? And the answer was no. The answer was no. And so that can help us in making these tough decisions in ministry. And if you're not called to ministry and you're listening, and you personally know God wants you to do something, let's not even call it a calling. You just know God wants you to have a certain type of career, or God wants you to serve in this capacity at a church, and you're aware of this. You're passionate about it. You feel like it is God's plan for you. Don't give up on that. Don't give up on that. That's my advice to you, is wait it out. Stick with God. Keep putting him first. Keep being active. Keep working in that direction and trust him to provide at the right time. It's not going to be easy all the time. In fact, many times it's not easy because it's a test of our faith, and it's a necessary growing point in our faith to trust God. Oftentimes when people are talking, I'm wondering, like, when they're trying to make a decision, I'm thinking, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? They say what they need to do. They just don't know how to do it, or when to do it. Well, the answer about when is now, and how is just trying, and God will make it apparent how. That's my advice in a nutshell. So that let that be of maybe some encouragement to you out there listening today. Back to our Horizon story, I was thinking I could support our own mission work. This is back in the early summer or throughout the summer by getting a full-time job, online job, a secular job, with my other skills I have, my other degrees I have, and then not even needing to ask for support for our ministries. I could just fund them myself. I mean, it sounds very tempting. And it also sounds like, man, I don't need you guys. I can do this all on my own. I can, you drop support, that's fine. I'll just do it all on my own. And, sometimes as Christians, we can get that way, where things don't work out how we want. And we just think, you know what, whether it be at a church or with a group of churches or in a ministry with other people, and we think, I'll just do it on my own. That's fine. I don't need you. Just me and God. That's not true at all. We need each other. Others need us. God has designed it that way. It is not good for man to be alone, for us to be alone. It is just not. And it's not in the will of God. We are to love God and love others. Those are the two greatest commandments. And you can't do one without the other. They're both dependent on one another. And so in loving others, you can't love others if you're isolated from others. Just by the very nature of that command, it requires being involved in some sort of community. And God has designed the church for that. And that's one aspect of why he designed the church. So I can't lie, it was extremely tempting to look at online jobs based in other states that pay higher salaries and think of, man, I could do that and just do it all on my own. That was a temptation for me. I had to fight that. I had to pray through that. I had to spend some time in that thought. But God ultimately would not let my heart have peace about that decision spiritually. I feel like making that decision would not have put me in a good spiritual place. And it probably would have puffed up my pride and all sorts of other things. So it isn't what God wanted me to do. And we wouldn't have been able to continue doing our Russian ministries like we are doing them in the case as we do right now, because my typical working hours here would have overlapped with my ministry to Russians and the time that we typically work with them there, which oftentimes for us primarily is around our lunchtime. That is the most interactive time for us with our Russian ministries, which is in the evenings there. And in the end, God ended up opening the right opportunity at the right moment. Let me elaborate. When you are in ministry and stateside, regardless of what you are doing, people will offer you positions. And that this is even for people who are not in ministry. If you know what you're supposed to be doing in your career, you're driven, you're going to ministry fairs, you're seeking out opportunities, people are going to offer you positions. Well, and maybe those positions aren't the right position. Maybe they're, in terms of the right position, the position that God would like for you to have in his plan for you. Whether it's the position to pastor, the position to plant a church stateside, the position to serve in another ministry, there will be opportunities. There's a huge, huge, huge need for more missionaries, more church planters stateside, more pastors. There are so many leaderless groups of people, whether it be churches or churches that were in the process of being planted that never worked out, and the people are just there. There's going to be opportunities. And we're going to get how to deal with these opportunities that aren't bad opportunities. Perhaps they're not in God's plan for you. And we're going to deal with those in later episodes this season as we discuss decision making. You know, in my case with Horizon, I was not only having that happen, opportunities given to me, provided to me, hung in front of me, tempting me during this decline of support, which made those opportunities more appealing, some of them more than others. But I was having the potential outs alongside this. And this is a really dangerous place for people in my position. When they're in a situation of desperation and need, and there are a lot of potential outs around them that would not necessarily require a change of overall career in ministry, but a change in the specific calling God has called them to. I can't say I didn't pray about and think about these opportunities. Among those opportunities and what I consider to be a sort of joke was when my friend John Strader told me I could come to Horizon potentially and work alongside him while continuing with my ministries. I thought it was a joke at first because of the setting we were in. And even if it wasn't a joke, I thought there's no way, absolutely no way he could be actually serious. And I was completely content in a lot of ways at my sending church that I had. Really, that was the first church I was ever in since I was saved, the first church I was ever a part of, the first church I was ever a member of, the church I was baptized in. I was completely content there and following God's calling for me with HeartWay and with Russian Ministries online. Now that's another very difficult situation, though, that we need to address, is when you're completely content and comfortable with where you are at, but situations force change. For instance, you can't get a visa to return to your country of service. And I know there are some Russians listening and some people who have lived in Russia recently that we are friends with, that we work with, and they're in a situation where maybe they had to make the decision. Maybe they thought that was the best decision for them to leave Russia, and they can't get back in right now. That's just not an opportunity, but they also don't know where they're going to end up. And so in this situation, even though they were comfortable with maybe the careers they had, the situations they were in, external situations forced them out of the situation they were in, and now they are in a unstable situation, or maybe an uncertain situation, or maybe they're excited in some ways, nervous in other ways, but there's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe in another case, situations forcing change, maybe you get an illness that no longer allows you to serve in the same capacity. That happens, right? That can happen. Maybe you don't have the funds available to continue exactly how things are, and maybe that will lead you to bivocational, trivocational, switching your position. I know that this is happening a lot right now. And this was like my situation with Greater Heights, a church there in Angleton, Texas, my hometown. The ministries were going well. We were also happy with Greater Heights and the leadership there and the people there and at Greater Heights. Also, in understanding this bigger picture, we had just made a major transition and just started the ministries that we're now doing with HeartWay and Russian Ministries online. And that is moving from St. Petersburg, Russia, back to stateside when we took that flight, we didn't know we weren't going to be able to get back. And that was also in the midst of the pandemic, when people weren't allowed to see each other and there were so many restrictions. So we didn't get to end that well. There's a whole episode on transitions that we did in a previous season of podcast. Check it out if you haven't. And with a family, we just weren't wanting to make another major transition in the summer. Like we just, HeartWay had just kicked off in January. We hadn't been doing Russian ministries that long. Honestly, not last year, but this December, so just over a year ago, a year and a month ago, 13 months ago, we moved into a home, our first ever home we've owned. And there was a lot of reasons that went into that decision. Then we could discuss even that in this whole context of decision making this season, because that's a major decision, whether to buy or to rent, and going through that. Transitions do affect your family. Don't believe anybody that says they don't. They may affect your family differently, but it's going to affect your family. It just is. There's not really anything you can do about it, especially if the transition is kind of a forced thing out of situations that are out of your control. And you grow closer together as a family through that, and you grow closer to God. So there are benefits through difficult transitions, but no, they do affect your family, and be aware of that. Those of you who have family that are in the midst of transition or just recently coming out of transition or about to go into a transition, be aware they do not only affect you, but they also affect your family. And it would be differently how it affects your family than you. So many options. So we had many options at this point in the summer that we could do to help with finances, but none of them seemed to be the option in God's plan. And it was really just a faith thing for us to kind of wait it out. Over those months, we began to see if we had a church that we could, maybe that would let us be a part of, that we could use as a starting point for care ministries, that we had a good setting for that in, that maybe it would help us in developing some of our care ministries with HeartWay and getting them eventually out to more pastors and missionaries. So knowing all this and having John in my mind, I just decided, I checked with John to see if he was actually serious about this thing he had said. And we originally discussed part-time, but I can't really go part-time into something. I mean, I'm in. If I'm in, I'm in. So I asked if full-time was an option, and it did take a step of faith on both his part and Horizon's part, but they decided to call me as their care pastor. And Eric, as care pastor, just because that's a confusing position for some people, my position aids the senior pastor in his leadership of Horizon to function as a scriptural New Testament church. My position exercises biblical defined pastoral duties. My position participates with pastoral leadership in defining and implementation of the overall vision and direction of the church. My position provides biblical counseling that encourages spiritual growth and integration into the church body. My position provides wisdom and knowledge and financial guidance and planning for the church. My position actively engages the church in mission-related events and helps in the planning and organizing of such events. My position leads HeartWay pastor and missionary caregivers as a way to minister to pastors and missionaries and their families, emphasizing those Horizon partners with. My position leads Russian Ministries online to continue assisting the church in St. Petersburg through transition, reaching out to the lost, sharing the gospel, discipling those who are saved, and organizing the planting of more physical churches in Russia and throughout the world, primarily among the Russian people. In other words, this position was made for me in following God's calling, and in Horizon following the Lord's leadership. And I'm super excited about not only continuing and developing Russian Ministries Online and HeartWay, but serving Horizon in this capacity. I feel like we have come at not only the perfect time for us and our family, but for the church too, and what they have gone through recently. And I started this position nearly a couple months ago. I feel completely at peace with this decision and feel like it is exactly where God wants us. But how did I get to it? What did I go through? What were the deciding factors? Other than the easy answer of God, there are some practical biblical ways to go about making decisions like this. You don't have to make decisions and just blindly hope they're in God's will. You can be more confident. You can have more peace. It isn't always easy, and oftentimes it isn't. It isn't necessarily going to happen in your timing, and oftentimes won't. But remember and dwell on this verse that we hear over and over again. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your welfare, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. We don't want to just follow good things. We want to follow the plans that God has for us. How do we go about making those decisions? This is what we're going to be covering this season in future episodes. I hope this episode has been helpful to you. I hope that maybe you've been able to relate to some of the points in my story to come to Horizon. What was a part of that? What led to that? That it was ultimately God and others following God and me following God that led to us coming to Horizon. It was all God. And in following God, God created something that is just beautiful, in my opinion. It's just beautiful, and I highly expect for Him to work beautifully through us, through the church this year. I expect that because I trust that we're following Him in faith, and I feel there's confidence in that. And I'm excited about that. And so as we get into these next episodes, I want you to, as you're working through your decisions for the new year, I'm still working on things that I would like to do this new year, even though we're in the new year, and that's okay. You don't have to be like, oh, by January 1st, I'm ready to go. No, you can work. We're not stuck in that. You don't have to be stuck in that system. But it is a good time at the new year to think about decisions that need to be made and how to make those decisions. and to know what decisions need to be made. And so throughout this season, throughout the next several weeks, the next 10 episodes, this is what we're going to focus on. I look forward to recording the next episode in a couple weeks. I hope and pray that each and every one of you listening get an opportunity to share with someone else how God has been good to you, to be a positive influence in someone else's life, that you're encouraged also by this podcast, and that you're not only using this podcast as a resource in helping you to navigate your journey in following God, but you're also reading His Word and meditating on His Word. And I hope and pray that you're doing that too. And so until next time, this has been the HeartWay podcast, where we seek to help with issues at the source.